Christmas Eve here, and we're going to talk about some presents that have landed at different programs through the transfer portal. How about that for an intro? Drake C. Toll, how you doing, bud?
I'm great, DJ. Happy holidays to everybody out there. Merry Christmas to you as well. And Merry Christmas to a whole lot of Big 12 schools who have attacked the transfer portal, and a couple of them have already taken home coal or found their stockings completely empty.
We'll keep this really, really punny and really, really on brand. Is BYU the Grinch and Utah is kind of all of Whoville right now?
Well, interesting that you start there because Utah has been a bit of a revolving door and not in the worst way. The word that I used earlier this offseason for a couple of Big 12 schools was crisis. And I don't know if Utah is in a crisis necessarily, but they're also not in a spot where their fans are very happy because the second they get a big-time commit out of the transfer portal, one of their players leaves and goes to BYU. Or they figure out, okay, oh, shoot, we got this guy who's committed out of his mission from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then, oh, nope, he's not anymore. Instead, he's going to go join BYU. That's the Clegg situation they're dealing with right now for a kid who came back and said, wait a second, after my 2 years gone, I now realize that BYU is much more serious about their athletic department, about football, namely. And for Utah, they're fourth in the Big 12 right now per Heartland College Sports in their transfer portal ranking. They got 12 incoming guys, a spattering of a couple of 4-stars in that package as well. Wayshawn Parker is the number one. He is the running back from Washington State, one of the top running backs in the entire portal. But it feels like the second they land a big name, they start to lose guys from their last high school, the last big high school recruiting class that was a top 30 crew for Kyle Whittingham and company, and those guys are mostly departing. They lose one of their best tight end prospects to BYU, and those are situations that Utah did not want to be a part of this offseason. So as big as a couple of their pickups have been through the portal, Blake Cotton is another who I circled, Jackson Jones. They're losing guys to BYU, and even if it's only one or two, they're certainly aware of that. I think the second Utah fans get momentum, they're brought right back down to earth, and I'm not sure what that equals for 2025.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is certainly they have to be better in 25 than they were in 24, right?
Well, you would hope so. And there have been stories of these schools. I look at Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, who went kind of up and down there at the very beginning. You're thinking, okay, can he consistently win here, wins a national championship? For Kyle Whittingham at Utah, he's gone 7-5 before. He's gone 7-5 in consecutive years and then come back a couple of years later to win a Pac-12 championship. Longevity is the name of the game for a lot of these coaches at not mid-major schools, but outside of that Power 15. We know Ohio State, Alabama, Auburn. Those are tumultuous jobs. So I talked a lot about how a Jimbo Fisher could thrive at West Virginia or a smaller job compared to an A&M where the pressure is so high. At Utah, the pressure is not near as high as it is at a Florida State. So for Kyle Whittingham, he's got an opportunity to work his way back next season. And because he's done this before, I have a lot of confidence he'll do it again in 25.
So the other side of that is BYU. What have you thought about them in the portal overall? And, you know, listen, they were super hot early, kind of tailed off a little bit at the end. With their pickups, can they be right there competing again next year?
Not yet. Look, BYU is behind. They're 15th right now, again, per Heartland College Sports in their transfer portal pickups. But the one thing that I hang on to, if you're a BYU Cougar fan, is you don't really need that many guys. For Baylor, it's the same situation of, hey, most of your key players are back, and you picked up a couple from the high school ranks that are instant impact guys. So while BYU is currently sitting on 4 incoming transfers, only 3 of them have a star rating next to their name. That Carson Ryan one's a big one because he comes from Utah, was a great high school prospect, is a solid tight end, 6'4", 256. I love what they're going to do with him. But outside of that, nobody's jumping off the page for me, though they've only lost really one key guy to the transfer portal right now, a safety who was going to be a contributor next season, who was in essence this last year. So I'm not pushing the red button or pulling the fire alarm right now for BYU, but I'm kind of sitting in the middle wondering, post-bowl game, do they attack harder? Because Colorado is also in that boat right now of, this isn't the 40 guys we saw last season from Deion Sanders. Is it because that bowl game looms large and they want to win that? Is there too much focus there? Could be the case for BYU right now. I'm sitting at a solid B minus, middle of the road, which is not terrible, but also not as stellar as Texas Tech.
Yeah, we'll talk about Texas Tech in just a minute, but some programs that aren't necessarily feeling the love. Maybe these are our Bob Cratchits to keep it on Christmas, struggling with Ebenezer Scrooge down there at Texas Tech. Some programs that aren't doing very well or struggling right now in the portal.
Yeah, Kansas State is your Tiny Tim. I'll put it that they're your cripple of the Big 12 right now because they do need to reload a bit and create a better roster next season because I thought they underperformed at 8-4 this past year and fizzled out. We talked about 7-1 Kansas State. What can they do down the stretch? The answer was not very much. Finish 8-4. And while they have Gabe Powers coming in, an all-star linebacker from Ohio State, outside of that, they're 14th in the Big 12 right now in the transfer portal. At the time of recording, 7 incoming transfers. That can certainly change for Chris Kleiman, and I do believe with your quarterback returning, Avery Johnson, building a solid core there at Kansas State. Hopefully we see Dylan Edwards come back as well, and now we're talking this JUCO rule that's thrown everybody for a loop, where if you were a JUCO player originally, you still have that eligibility. For Kansas State, they need to navigate that quickly. Again, at 14th, I don't like where they are. I'm also a little leery of TCU, sitting at 10th in the conference after what they thought was a tumultuous 8-4 season, a really tough start, blowout loss to SMU. They picked up a couple of 4-star guys. Jordan Dwyer is the one that I've circled at wide receiver. Pimpton at tight end is going to be solid for them as well, but I still need to see TCU elevate itself above that 10 spot, and obviously for Kansas State elevate itself above 14. Then you look at the spattering of UCF or West Virginia, who are going through coaching changes, and it's going to take them a bit to get off the ground in the transfer portal, and I expect them to end better than 16th. That's where West Virginia is right now. UCF sits at 12th, which isn't terrible a week into their new coaching regime, but for the schools with new head coaches, I get it. Give them a little bit of time. They're going to need a little bit of time, but I hope they're in a better spot here come a couple weeks.
So I want to ask about Texas Tech, but quickly, but when we recorded last week, we didn't know the Caden Salter news was finalized. Just thoughts on him coming in there. Obviously, they have Juju coming in as a true freshman as well, but thoughts on Salter and Juju there next year at Colorado.
How about Colorado in general this season? We've said it every show we've done about the Buffs, but TJ, we could have been more wrong about Deion Sanders even 8 weeks ago, talking about whether or not this team could put it together, and now they're doing it in the transfer portal side. And I think with the addition of not just, like you said, Salter and Juju, but also the addition of the defensive keys like Jaheim Otis coming in. That's a kid from Alabama who will be an instant impact player. That's what I need to see from Colorado. That's the Kansas game where they really got out of whack. How good can their defense be next season? Can they continue to build on the offensive line as well? They've already brought in 1 4-star tackle. They got 11 total transfers at the time of recording. That obviously will go up post-bowl game. It won't be the 40 of last year, but I'm excited for cornerback Makari Vickers out of Oklahoma. That's a guy you at Jacksonville State linebacker Reginald Hughes. That's another guy who's instant impact, a 3-star linebacker who's got a lot of experience on the football field. For the Buffs, they're in a spot this year. They don't need 40. They need a solid 20 that plug into areas where they can fill holes. And defensively, while I'm excited about the offensive pickups, Salter's one of those guys. He was really solid at Liberty. I think he'll instantly translate. I'm even more pumped about defensive additions for Colorado and Deion Sanders.
Lastly, the team that, like we said, is Ebenezer Scrooge, just grabbing absolutely everything and laying waste to the portal, is Texas Tech. True or false, they're a competitor in the Big 12 with their pickups this year.
Greedy. This is the school that I liken to a TCU. I say, TCU, why aren't you doing this? Kansas State, why aren't you doing this? That pool of 8-4 teams from the Big 12 that had the opportunity to go into the portal and find not just plug-and-play guys, have some positive attrition, but to go over the top. Let's get greedy and grab 4-star players. Oh, we lost our 5-star wide receiver because he was a prima donna. Great. We'll go get 4-star wide receiver, 3-star wide receiver. How about a couple 4-star defensive linemen or defensive ends? That's what Texas Tech is doing. And what they'll ultimately do, TJ, is create competition. Joey McGuire's bringing these new guys in and saying, look, you might not be a starter day one. Hey, for you guys who have been here for 3 years, compete, because those new guys might be a starter day one. When you've got that kind of culture, a culture of competition, you can mold a college football team that competes. Texas Tech is a top 5 team in the Big 12 next year based on roster alone. Can Joey McGuire actually win with it? That's a question we're going to have to answer in 2025, but at least he's got the horses in the stable. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. The Avid brothers are playing a New Year's Eve show at Bojangles in Charlotte, North Carolina. While you may not care, I do care. So I went to Game Time and said, hey, could you help me get some tickets? They gave me the lowest price, guaranteed. With Game Time, you have a curation with Game Time Picks that makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy that you like. It tracks what you want to go to. All-in pricing, toggle the feature, show the total upfront, no surprise fees at checkout. Get a panoramic seat view as well from your seat in the app before you buy. Lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. With Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Utilize Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.